Have you ever pondered about the roots of one of the world's most enduring conflicts, the one between Gaza and Israel? The seeds of this conflict were sown in the late 19th century, with the birth of the Zionist movement. This was a time when nationalist sentiments were sweeping across Europe, and the Jewish people were no exception. They too dreamed of a homeland, a place where they could live free from persecution. This longing for a homeland was not a new concept, but the Zionist movement gave it a political framework and a name: Zionism. This dream started to take shape with the Balfour Declaration of 1917. In a letter to Lord Rothschild, a leader of the British Jewish community, Arthur Balfour, the British Foreign Secretary, stated that the British government viewed with favor the establishment of a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine. This seemingly innocuous statement would have far-reaching consequences. Following the end of World War I, Britain gained control over Palestine under a League of Nations mandate. With this mandate, Britain was entrusted with the task of implementing the Balfour Declaration. However, they found themselves caught between the aspirations of the Jewish immigrants, who were arriving in increasing numbers, and the Arab population, who viewed these newcomers with suspicion and resentment. As the years went on, the tensions between these two groups continued to grow. The Jewish immigrants, driven by the horrors of the Holocaust and the dream of a Jewish homeland, were determined to stay. The Arab population, on the other hand, felt increasingly threatened by the growing Jewish presence and their claims to the land. The stage was set for a conflict that would last for decades, with the establishment of Israel in 1948. The year 1948 marked a significant turning point in the history of the Middle East. This was the year that witnessed the birth of a new nation, Israel, a development that would change the region's landscape forever. The establishment of Israel was not a peaceful transition. It was a defining moment that sparked immediate reaction from its Arab neighbors, leading to the First Arab-Israeli War. The State of Israel was declared on the 14th of May 1948, a day before the expiration of the British Mandate for Palestine. This was a momentous occasion for the Jewish people, who had long yearned for a homeland of their own. However, it was a development that was met with vehement opposition by the surrounding Arab states, who viewed the creation of Israel as an imposition on the Palestinian Arabs. Almost immediately after Israel's declaration of independence, 5 Arab nations, Egypt, Iraq, Jordan, Lebanon, and Syria, launched a military campaign against the fledgling nation. This marked the beginning of the First Arab-Israeli War, a conflict characterized by fierce battles, shifting front lines, and a high human cost. The war raged on for nearly 10 months, with neither side willing to back down. Finally, in 1949, a series of armistice agreements were reached. These agreements did not resolve the underlying issues, but rather established ceasefire lines, marking the boundaries of the newly formed Israel and the territories held by Arab states. One of the key outcomes of the 1949 armistice was the establishment of the Gaza Strip under Egyptian control. This narrow strip of land along the Mediterranean coast, densely populated by Palestinian Arabs, was to become a focal point of the Arab-Israeli conflict in the years to come. The 1948 war ended with a shaky armistice, leaving the region in a state of unresolved tension. The birth of Israel and the First Arab-Israeli War had set the stage for a series of conflicts and power struggles that continue to shape the Middle East to this day. Fast forward to 1967, a year that would drastically alter the landscape of the conflict. The year witnessed what's now famously known as the Six-Day War, a conflict that lasted less than a week but had repercussions that echo to this day. The war was initiated by Israel against Egypt, Syria, and Jordan, and by the end of this short yet incredibly intense conflict, Israel emerged victorious, seizing control of several territories. Among these were the West Bank from Jordan, the Sinai Peninsula and Gaza Strip from Egypt, and the Golan Heights from Syria. These conquests significantly expanded Israel's geographical footprint, but more importantly, they intensified the political and social discord in the region. In the wake of the war, a significant number of Palestinians found themselves displaced. They were forced to leave their homes in the newly seized territories, creating a refugee crisis that further fueled the flames of conflict. The Gaza Strip, once under Egyptian administration, was now under Israeli control, and its inhabitants were subjected to a new rule, a new reality. In the years following the Six-Day War, Israel began establishing settlements in these seized territories, including the Gaza Strip. These settlements were, and continue to be, a source of major contention. They are seen by many as an encroachment on Palestinian lands and a violation of international law. But for Israel, they served as a strategic and ideological assertion of their claim to these lands. The Six-Day War, though brief, left an indelible mark on the Arab-Israeli conflict. It changed the physical, political, and human landscape of the region. It set in motion a chain of events that would lead to more wars, more suffering, and an even deeper divide between the Israelis and Palestinians. With the end of the Six-Day War, the Gaza Strip found itself under Israeli control, setting the stage for further conflict. The latter part of the 20th century saw a shift in the dynamics of the conflict. As the dust from the Six-Day War settled, a new wave of resistance emerged within the Palestinian territories. This period witnessed what became known as the First and Second Intifadas, or uprisings. The First Intifada began in 1987 as a mass civil disobedience movement against the Israeli occupation. It was characterized by strikes, boycotts, and protests, as well as violent confrontations. This uprising brought to the forefront a new player in the conflict, Hamas, a fundamentalist Islamic group born out of the Brotherhood movement. While the First Intifada was largely a grassroots movement, the Second Intifada, which erupted in 2000, took on a much more militarized character. This period saw an increase in suicide bombings and armed attacks against Israeli targets, with Hamas and other militant groups playing a significant role. Now let's shift our focus to 2005, a pivotal year that saw Israel unilaterally disengage from the Gaza Strip. This meant the removal of all Israeli settlers and the military from the area. While this move was seen as a step towards peace by some, it created a power vacuum. 2 years later, in 2007, Hamas seized control of the Gaza Strip after a brief yet intense conflict with the Fatah-led Palestinian Authority. This takeover solidified Hamas's position as a key player in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and marked a significant shift in the dynamics on the ground. The rise of Hamas and the Israeli withdrawal from Gaza laid the groundwork for the current situation. The Israeli blockade on Gaza, imposed after the Hamas takeover, and the ongoing hostilities have resulted in a protracted humanitarian crisis, with millions facing food insecurity and inadequate access to basic services. This complex and ever-evolving conflict continues to shape the lives of those in the region, with no clear resolution in sight. Fast forward to today, the conflict between Gaza and Israel is far from resolved. The region remains a hotbed of tension and strife, with sporadic outbreaks of violence that are a stark reminder of the unresolved issues that lie at the heart of this conflict. Israeli settlements continue to be a contentious issue, with new settlements being established in areas that many consider to be Palestinian territory. This has led to a series of international disputes and has intensified the friction between the two sides. The situation in Gaza is particularly dire. A humanitarian crisis looms large, with millions of people facing food insecurity and famine. Medical facilities are stretched to their limits, and many have been forced to shut down, leaving countless individuals without access to essential health care. In the midst of this relentless turmoil, there have been concerted international efforts to mediate the conflict. The United States, for instance, has imposed sanctions on Israeli settlers in a bid to curb the violence. Aid flights have become essential, with the United States and other Western countries urging Israel to allow more aid into Gaza. But these efforts are fraught with challenges, and the path to peace remains elusive. The future of Palestinian leadership remains uncertain, adding another layer of complexity to the ongoing conflict. As the struggle for power continues, the people of Gaza and Israel are left to grapple with the harsh realities of a conflict that has spanned generations. The story of Gaza and Israel continues, a testament to the complexity of historical conflicts and the human for identity and homeland. If you found this video informative, please like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into historical conflicts.